4. Panther Mobile. After decades of obscurity, the Panther Mobile appeared at an auction a few years ago. It was specifically built to appear in the opening credits of the iconic cartoon series The Pink Panther, and since then it's had extensive restoration work done thanks to its new owners. The unique Panther Mobile is 23 feet long and 6 feet wide, and it was sculpted from sheet metal using a 1960s Oldsmobile Tornado chassis. Because the driver's seat is outside the car itself, the driver is required to wear a helmet. The space-age style and two-piece clamshell doors ooze vintage 1970s flair for the all-pink car. The inside is filled with shag reclining seats and pink fuzzy cushions where passengers can unwind while sipping on champagne or talking on the retro 1970s car phone. The driver can even see behind the car thanks to a backup camera and tiny black and white TV. Even if the vehicle was always working, as you can see in the series opening, it's likely that it was never actually registered since it was not fully authorized. Its pointed front, which is exceedingly attractive, lacks impact-absorbing elements, and its specific construction does not fulfill current safety regulations for the road. Despite being a unique and recognizable phenomenon, there are some sources for the Panther Mobile that are still a little unclear. It was auctioned off in 2007 by J. Orberg, the designer of some of the most well-known cars in cinema and television, including KITT, the DeLorean from Back to the Future, the General Lee from the Dukes of Hazzard, and the infamous Batmobile from 1966 and 1989. Despite what most people might think, Orberg didn't design the Panther Mobile. In reality, the bright pink custom car, the world's most flamboyant vehicle, was made by Ed Newton in 1969 at Bob Reisner California Show Cars, with the help of Bill Honda, Bill Hines, Dan Woods, and Joe Bailon. The front-wheel drive car was bought by Los Angeles-based Galpin Autosports, a prominent seller of 1970s custom cars, at a British auction back in 2011. Before that, it simply sat in a garage the entire time. It was truly terrible. The Oldsmobile's 7.0-litre engine didn't start. The outside had been painted over several times, and the inside had been damaged with cheap repairs. Dave Schutem was given the brunt of the repair work, and he got started as soon as possible. It took some time because he called upon Joe Perez, who was 90 at that time and was the original upholsterer of the Panther Mobile. According to Bo Boakman, president of Galpin Motors, it may look cool, but the Pink Panther Mobile is the world's worst car to drive. The gas and brake pedals are not where they're supposed to be. There's no power steering and the steering wheel barely turns. But it is a great car to be driven around in, I have to say. Would you take it out for a spin? 3. Tallahassee Airstrip. The South Pacific is littered with World War II artifacts everywhere you look. Under some small towns, there's a network of military tunnels. Underwater, covered with coral, lie sunken planes and equipment. More undiscovered wartime relics, including a deserted airstrip, are hidden inside dense forests. Tallahassee was designed as a small landing strip and built by the Australian Army. During World War II, both the Japanese and Americans were consistently exchanging hands as they simultaneously occupied Tallahassee. Near the end of the war, it ended up being used as an emergency landing strip since it was unable to accommodate fighter planes. The landing strip had its last active moments in early September 1944. A US B-25H bomber took off from Sterling Island on September 3, 1944, with the mission of destroying any surviving Japanese ships off the southern coast of Great Britain. Although the operation was ultimately successful, the B-25H aircraft experienced some engine issues, so the pilot decided to make an emergency landing at Tallahassee Island instead of taking a chance on the long journey back to base. A Lockheed Ventura was sent out on a similar mission to target a Japanese-occupied airport close to Rabaul less than a week later. Although the Lockheed's mission was successful, one of its engines also failed on the flight back. The crew decided to land at Tallahassee as well, since they knew their aircraft wouldn't be able to return to base. The airfield at Tallahassee was shut down not long after the war wrapped up. In the 1960s, palm oil plantations grew everywhere around the landing strip, and nature slowly encroached on the area around the planes. In comparison to its past runway grandeur, the airport is hardly recognizable now. But the B-25 aircraft and Lockheed remain in their last resting places, leaving behind traces of the country's turbulent past. You can approach the B-25H bomber, which is sitting on its undercarriage on top of thick vegetation, by exploring through the overgrown jungle on foot. The Lockheed Ventura is only a few yards to the west. You can still go inside the plant-filled undercarriage and visualize the cramped areas where the pilots and crew would have once sat during wartime. The Allied Star, which is lying on its side, is now barely visible. Have you ever seen an abandoned plane in person? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe. 2. Motorcycle Graveyard. There are so many amazing abandoned spots in New York, many of which are said to be haunted, holding the spirit of lingering ghosts. But beyond the city of Lockport, there's a graveyard full of historical artifacts that will leave you speechless. The Motorcycle Graveyard of Lockport, found within a warehouse built sometime in the 1800s, was once home to a successful company. The warehouse was finished in 1875, according to official city records, but the hand-cut canal stone used in its construction suggests it may have been done much earlier. The building, which is more than 53,000 square feet in size, had long been hidden in plain sight, with onlookers unaware of the marvels rotting away inside. The warehouse became known as Cole Cycle Sales in the 1970s. Cole had been collecting bikes and other scrap metal for more than 50 years, which was once a booming business. Frank Morrill, the last owner to actually maintain the warehouse, purchased the property from Cole sometime in 1997. Frank kept operating the company under the name Cole Cycle Salvage, selling several of the motorbikes still in the warehouse. Regrettably, Frank had to shut down the business sometime around 2007. The motorcycle-filled, abandoned building overlooking the Erie Canal started to deteriorate very rapidly. Within a couple of years after Frank closed up shop, the city of Lockport eventually possessed the building. Vandals frequented the warehouse, which came to be commonly known as the Motorcycle Graveyard. The building was allegedly slated to be completely demolished in 2011, but because of the complications with the State Historic Preservation Office, it never happened. According to them, the site had great historical value and should be kept preserved. Sadly, a bunch of teens set fire to the property in 2013. Although many locals tried to visit the motorcycle warehouse over the years it sat empty, the history that was still within the building was lost forever in the July 2013 fire. People who thought the building had a rich history say that New York would never again be home to an industrial cemetery like this one. The majority of the motorcycles and scrap metal still inside the structure belong to bikes dating back to the 1960s and 70s. 1. Bus 142. In the heart of the Alaskan wilderness, a bus that's been abandoned for years was rediscovered in 1992 by two moose hunters. And inside, they found the body of 24-year-old Chris McCandless, a wanderer who'd left his former life to live off the grid in Alaska, inside the rusting, overgrown bus. The Stampede Trail bus, known as Bus 142, the Magic Bus, and the Into the Wild bus, has attracted tourists from all over the world and has turned into a symbol that's both admired and controversial. The vehicle is a 1940s original International Harvester that once served the Fairbanks City Transit system. After being decommissioned, it was stripped of its engine and turned into a temporary shelter after being purchased by the Utah Construction Company. They set up a wood stove and sleeping accommodations for their men assigned to developing access for trucks transporting ore from nearby mines. Utah Construction abandoned the bus when the project was finished in 1961. It remained hidden away in its secluded forest site outside of Denali National Park for the next 60 years, serving as a haven and shelter for hunters and backcountry travelers. A guest book, maps, provisions for survival, and messages etched into the bus's interior were among some souvenirs that the bus picked up from visitors over the years. After the terrible death of Chris McCandless, famous author John Krakauer wrote about the 24-year-old getting lost in the Alaskan wilderness. In his 1996 book Into the Wild, he included all of his findings. Krakauer spent years reading through Chris's journals, speaking with his family, and even hiking the same route Chris had once taken years before in order to learn as much as he could about the man. He went to the same spots and set up interviews with several of Chris's former acquaintances, associates, and witnesses. Actor and director Sean Penn made it into an award-winning film, also called Into the Wild, back in 2007. The Into the Wild bus is extensively featured in the movie and McCandless's final images, and it's come to represent his life-changing journey. As a result, countless people were so affected by the story that they started to hike to the location of the bus and kept doing so for years to come. Locals began to call the visitors McCandless pilgrims because of the alarming number that arrived each year, which easily reached 100 or so. Several people have gotten lost, suffered injuries, and even died while trying to follow the young drifters' route to the infamous bus. The first case of a hiker dying while en route to the vehicle was reported in 2010. Claire Ackerman, a 24-year-old Swiss lady, died while trying to cross the Teklanika River, which once stopped McCandless from returning home. Ackerman had been trekking with a hiking pal who told authorities that the bus, which happened to be across the river, was not where they were originally headed. Despite the fact that most had happier outcomes than Ackerman, pilgrims continued to arrive even after word of her death spread. In 2013, 2 significant rescue operations took place. 3 hikers from Germany had to be saved in May 2019. 3 other travelers were evacuated by a passing military helicopter a month later. And the most recent rescue was when 5 Italian hikers were rescued by Alaska State Troopers in February 2020, and one of them had potentially fatal frostbite. Between 2009 and 2017, a total of 15 search and rescue operations were performed by the state, and after the latest death, locals had enough. It was obvious that the bus was important to many people, but since it was drawing people into risky circumstances, it was evident that something needed to be done. There were some that thought building a bridge across the river would fix the situation, making it safer to cross. Others, though, wanted the bus to be moved to a spot that could not be accessed. Regardless of either opinion, the one thing that cannot be denied is that Into the Wild started an obsession for people around the world. In order to stop hikers from putting their own safety in jeopardy while trying to visit the famous bus shelter, the Army National Guard had it transported to a safer site on June 18, 2020. The military and Veterans Affairs, Natural Resources, and Transportation Agencies of Alaska worked together on this project. It was appropriately named Operation Utah, after the company that was first responsible for leaving the bus behind. The 207th AVN pilots, flight engineers, crew chiefs, and mechanics arrived by UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter under the direction of the DNR to remove trees and obstructions as well as guarantee a secure rigging procedure for the bus. Finally, 12 men from Alaska's Army National Guard's 1st Battalion, 207th Aviation Regiment lifted the abandoned vehicle to a safe location in cooperation with the Department of Natural Resources. The National Guard released a statement saying that their removal team put together a suitcase and secured it inside the bus to ensure safe travel. The contents inside were of sentimental value to the McCandless family. After the removal, discussions on what to do next with the bus began. It was announced that it would be rehomed to the University of Alaska's Museum of the North. The museum later declared that they planned to build an outdoor display with it. The goal was to help travelers visit the bus safely. At the time of the removal, Alaska's Department of Natural Resources released a statement saying, "We encourage people to enjoy Alaska's wild areas safely, and we understand the hold this bus has had on the popular imagination. However, this is an abandoned and deteriorating vehicle that was requiring dangerous and costly rescue efforts, but more importantly, was costing some visitors their lives. I'm glad we found a safe, respectful, and economical solution to this situation." Thanks for watching. Which of these vehicles do you want to visit the most? Let us know in the comment section and subscribe to see more awesome videos.